one key country is not participating in the G20 summit, I think it brings to my mind one of the questions that have been debated in Brazilian diplomacy regarding G20 versus United Nations. G20 to a large extent being a locus where some of the big world challenges are being discussed. Why not in the United Nations? Why in the G20? This has been when the G20 was formed, the G20 summit. We have this debate in Brazilian diplomacy regarding legitimacy of the G20, and one thing is of course the benefit of the insight. You see, the G20 has been acquiring more and more legitimacy throughout the years. First beginning as a group that brought together the largest, a large percentage of the world GDP and also a large percentage of the population. And then it evolved, I think, further. During the Indian presidency, we had this key legacy of the African Union acceding to the group as a full-fledged member. In Brazilian presidency, you also have this issue of legitimacy in mind. So we promoted the first foreign affairs ministers meeting of the G20 in the premises of the United Nations. And open to all United Nations membership, and also we have this idea of bringing G20 closer to the world population, to the world citizenry. So the idea of the global, the task force against hunger and poverty, against climate change, so to show that the G20 could deliver tangible results to the world citizenry. So I just made this digression because the absence of course, of a key country, of course, has its impact. But I think, given that the G20 has gained throughout the years in legitimacy, and the fact that the South African presidency built its presidency on solid multilateral consensus and on the acquis of previous presidencies, lends greater clout, even greater legitimacy to the group that needs to move forward, in spite of the fact that, of course, that at least this year we have this absence. And has already been mentioned, the initiative G20 at 20 years. I think it's an emblematic initiative that says a lot about. I think would be sufficient to say that you have launched this initiative to conclude on how the issue of legitimacy and also building on previous presidencies so important, so key to South Africa. And of course, much has already been said regarding South Africa building on the legacy of the three previous developing countries that have occupied the presidency: Indonesia, India, and Brazil. So I will not repeat what I think has already been really thoroughly covered. One point is just to single out the legacy of the accession of the African Union as a full member. The Brazilian presidency worked closely with the African Union on, for example, elaborating the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, and also the Task Force Against Climate Change. And also high on our presidency agenda was African countries' indebtedness and the importance of reforming the global financial architecture. And also, I'm talking about the African dimension of our presidency because, as we know, more than 100 million Brazilian citizens have African roots. So this also has impacted not only the G2G but the engagement groups and the so-called social G20 that introduced this concept in our presidency. I'm very happy, very honored that you are taking forward this concept also in your presidency. So, and this is just, I think, to cover the point of legitimacy, and also the issue that the African dimension is gaining more space in the on the agenda for the G20. And I think I dare to be optimistic, because you have just mentioned that on introducing my presentation, whether our emerging countries, developing countries priorities will be maintained on the agenda after the fourth in a row presidency of a developing country would be passed on to a developed country. I dare to say yes. I dare to be optimistic, because many of these challenges of the developing world are so more and more intertwined with the challenges faced by the developed world, and I think the developing world is producing more and more solutions to for example, to the climate crisis, which are very useful to the developed world. I think one of the points, one of the priorities of your presidency is the critical minerals. This is a clear priority, which is very useful, of course, for the African continent, but extremely necessary or useful for the developing world to conduct the green transition. So this is an example regarding how these agendas sometimes are presented as side by side, but they interconnect, and to a certain extent they overlap, and I guess they will be more and more overlapping. Just to conclude, I think I have a couple of minutes. Huh? A couple of minutes. I think I do just two more points. I think that what I've been following from the cables my foreign affairs sends me about the evolution of your presidency, and what comes out of the reading of these cables, of these reports, is that South Africa has been ensuring in its presidency continuity regarding the previous G20 summits in at least three key dimensions: in nurturing the legitimacy of the group. I talked a lot about the legitimacy of the group, in guaranteeing its functionality, and in consolidating the priorities of developing countries on the agenda, alongside and overlapping with those of the agenda of the developed countries, which is key. These agendas have to be connected more and more if the group has to thrive in the future. And finally, I think one aspect of the G20 system is that, on the one hand, of course, the G2G dimension of the G20 is facing centrifugal geopolitical forces, but on the other hand, the engaged civil society participation and through the engagement groups are acting like centripetal forces, because the engagement groups they keep boosting more and more their participation, have been increasing their participation throughout the G20 summits, and you don't see at least what have been reading and following, you don't see these civil society groups, the engagement groups, not interested in keeping their participation even more active. And of course, we have also to remember that there are two engagement groups which are not really civil society groups, at least two: the Parliament 20 and the Judiciary 20. And they have particularly in these times we live, important role to play in bringing perspectives from the other two pillars of the democratic state, of the state, and thereby boosting legitimacy and plurality to the G20. So I think that I think we can allow ourselves, based on how South Africa is conducting its presidency, and also because the G20 is a process, it's not just something new. It has been going on and has already a history and has a whole key of consensus and experience in also in promoting G2G and B2B and people-to-people connection. I think we have room for from optimism regarding the future of the group. But I don't resist in finishing my intervention, keeping in mind what a towering South African statesman used to say, and this sentence has been resonating in my mind for many years. It always seems impossible until it's done. Thank you.